Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the general meeting of the Toyota Land Cruiser Club. I am Bob Fife, TLCC President. On my left is Alan Kidd, Club Secretary, and to my right, Mark Willock, Club Treasurer. Are there any visitors or new members present tonight? Oh, good evening. What is your name, please? Oh, okay, Brenton, yeah, I knew you were already booked in. Welcome to the club. If you want to ask any questions to somebody, you can speak to any of us later on, or people with yellow shirts on, or most people here have been in the club a long time. They can probably answer anything for you. And welcome to the club. Present as per the attendance book, and the apologies, and I think it's probably for the first time in the club's history, it would have been easier to read out the names of those who are in attendance. But apologies from Chris and Mari Taylor, David and Heidi Rowley, Colin Richards, Andrew and Lisa Boyd, John Kenny, John and Norma Ferguson, Elkie and Gary Cooper, Bob Anderson and Shirley Trelaw, John and Fran Gregg, Katie Regent and Max Turner, Lutz and Innes. I haven't used the surnames there because most people know who they are and they're slightly more difficult to pronounce. Then we have Colin Jenny Morby, Scott Gibbons, Robin Carol Alexander, and Sue and Ken Duffy. So that's almost a record of people who can't be here. The minutes from the previous meeting have been posted at the back of the room. I propose that those minutes of the previous general meeting be taken as read and confirmed. Do we have a mover, please? And a seconder? Okay, announcements for the evening. 4.1, and it's a shame some of these people aren't here, but I would like to thank Andrew and Lisa Boyd for their great effort catering for and organising our annual fireworks event on the Queen's birthday weekend at Coolandilly. This event is our best attended and takes a lot of work from many members who volunteer to be cooks, servers, or many other things, in addition to our Coolandilly Working Bee group and our land manager Brian Chisholm, all in support of Andrew and Lisa. So well done for all of those people. As most would know, the TLCC Western Australia are holding the biennial national gathering of TLCC clubs in October. By way of explanation, the event would normally have been at least a year ago, but COVID made that impossible. This get-together includes a conference of clubs, and to this end we can announce that we will be represented at the conference by 3 delegates. We're only allowed 3. They will be Sue Duffy, Philip Mead and Chris Taylor. Our thanks is offered to them for stepping up, as they are always likely to do, those 3 people. 4.3, a reminder to any members who submitted an expression for the hopefully upcoming first aid course, please book and pay on the club website. At this time we have 15 bookings paid for, but we must have 20 people paid up for the course to proceed. So if anybody is interested in that first aid course, you can find it on the website, and whether you gave an expression of interest or not, if you wish to, first in best dress, just go in and book. $140 a head it is, and we have the proper experienced and very talented people running the course for us. Then thank you to Brian Chisholm for filling in at the desk for videos, etc. Filling in, where am I? Filling in for John Ferguson. John is unable to be here tonight as he had a bit of a fall in his bathroom within the last week, I believe, and whilst he's not seriously injured, he's not feeling like driving long distances in the rain, as are many other people. Another thank you to Sally and Noel for sorting out some supper in the absence of Katie and Max. Well done at short notice. Very, very good. Vice President's report, there will not be one as Colin is flooded in, Colin Richards. But he did manage to arrange a guest speaker, and his name is Matthew. Now, I want to be careful when I... Matthew, how do I pronounce your surname? Okay, it's Matthew Caife. I was going to say Cafe, so I'm glad I asked him first. He's from the Transport New South Wales, and I think they'll be of interest to many people here tonight as a guest speaker. And to come in this weather, great stuff, Matthew, thank you. Treasurer's report, Mark.
Thank you, Bob, and good evening, everybody, on a very wet evening. Treasurer's report, not much to report, really. In June, the club had $17,000 worth of income. That was made up mainly of membership fees and bookings for the first aid course. We got a little bit of advertising in, and we also banked a $10,000 government grant. The Vice President's been working hard on that, but it's to put a returned serviceman memorial down at the property. So that money will be expended on putting that project together over the next few months. In the same month of June, we spent $25,000. We spent just over $11,000 on paying for track work that was done at Willow Glen earlier in the year. There was just a bit of a delay getting the invoicing in from the contractor. We spent about $2,500 at Coolandilly on bits and pieces and refurbishing the hut and whatnot. We also spent $6,500 on the fireworks event, including the fireworks themselves and the food and the catering and things that went with it. So as at the end of June, we have $394,000 left in the bank. So if anyone has any queries or questions on that, they can shout out to me. The only other issue is the club's public liability policy will be renewed in the next couple of days, so we're all insured for our trips and things like that again. Thank you.
Could we have a mover for acceptance of the Treasurer's report, please? No. And a seconder? Ricky? Okay, we will go on now. Well, we would normally go on with an education report, but John Kenny is one of our people who could not attend. So one of our members, Colleen Franks, wants to have just a little talk about a course she is going to be putting up to run shortly. Thank you, Colleen.
A meditation weekend, which I didn't know whether Bob would take that very well, but I offered it. I thought that the next time someone's wheels are hanging off a precipice and the wife screaming frantically at the husband, maybe a little bit of breathing exercise to relax you might just work. So I think the weekend is 14, 15 and 16 of October. It'll come up on the next,
CES,
it'll be on the next CES, but it'll start on the Friday, but the actual Saturday when we'll be doing the talking and the teaching. There'll be some indoor and some outdoor activity, and it really is just to learn how to relax, how to take it easy, and it's unlimited in amount of people. There's no cost, and it's really about mindfulness and meditation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Now, what Colleen was saying, I believe that the Friday the 14th, when most courses we do at Willow Glen, people like to go down on the Friday, have a nice night in the shed, and then get stuck into it on Saturday and Sunday. So, yeah, I believe that 14, 15, 16 of October will be the dates, and I'll speak to David tomorrow to see that that's put up on the website. Well, actually, that's incorrect. We put things up 6 weeks prior to the actual course happening. It'll be put up there so that people see it coming, but you won't be able to book until 6 weeks before. As most people would know, that if we open it up much before that, when we get close to the event, everybody all of a sudden has a wedding on, or Aunt Sally's get together and coffee. So if we do it at 6 weeks, we don't have the dropout rate. Just one other thing on education. The June driver training course was successfully run with one of the best social group of new members in memory, in quite cool conditions, with a first for DT, the very first time ever. On Saturday's last obstacle, the merry-go-round, we had to delay it till 7 a.m. the next morning because it got too dark and we had taken too long. So you can work out whether that was poor driving or whether the driver trainers, some of them talk too much. We'll sort that out. But anyhow, they went out at 7 a.m. the next morning and it was completed, and then they could come back and do Module 3 on the Sunday. So it's never happened before, and we hope it never happens again. Promotions would normally be next, but Andrew is not here. Social Director's report will not be happening because we don't have a social director. Anybody here want to be a social director? Deafening response. Land Manager's report, Brian.
Figured you had to be close, you were starting to run out of options. Thanks. Just to start, things are ticking along nicely on both properties. Willow Glen, we have a working bee on the 23rd and 24th of July. That'll be just some general maintenance and doing some prep work for a rather large working bee we're planning in September. If anyone can make it down to help us, particularly in September, it will be good. We're going to replace the fascia on the shed, and also start painting and varnishing the external areas of the amenities block and the handrails. It's a while since they've been done and are looking a little bit tired. At Coolandilee, we have a working bee scheduled for this weekend. Yes, it's still scheduled just. I am keeping an eye on that. Waterways Guide shows the river at Goodman's Ford at the moment at 4.7 metres. If it's below 4, we can access the property. So I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll put a note out on Facebook perhaps Thursday just to confirm whether it's still on or not, depending on the water level. So keep an eye on that if you happen to be going down. And also if you're coming down, you'll get free meat on Saturday night, which I'll happily cook for those that come, because it was leftover meat from the fireworks and that fell into my possession to use it at working bee. So that'll be on down there as well. Bring your own salads or vegetables or whatever you want to have with it. And that's, I think, about it for the moment. Thank you.
Club can't afford lettuce.
No, not lettuce, no.
Thank you very much, Brian. Membership report, Robin.
So at the moment, we now have 852 members in the club. We've had 10 new memberships from our last meeting, and we have 238 members accepting email only of their TLCC magazine. So we are slowly increasing our memberships, and memberships are now starting to get more new applications coming in. Okay.
Thank you, Robin. I think the 852 is really good because, you know, for the past few years we'd been levelling out at about 770, so I reckon we're close to 100 memberships more, and as most people would know, membership intake during COVID was unbelievable, which seems counterintuitive, but I guess people couldn't go overseas and they wanted to travel around Australia, and they had the good sense, many of them, to get a bit of driver training first. So they wouldn't get into trouble. So next, four-wheel drive activities. Ian.
At this point, Recce is wishing that we'd all do it the way they do in school, where we all line up by height, so he wouldn't be back and forth between tall, short, tall, short. No, I haven't got that many. I just couldn't work out which page was which. We've been very slow on trip listings coming up over the last few months, but we've actually had no trips actually run, and that's a number of factors, including just a touch of bad weather. Not much of it. Coming soon though, we've got a couple of trips to the Simpson, both of which are full. A Flinders and Lake Eyre, which at the last time I checked had some space, but I was too busy on the weekend to check the incoming email to work out whether the couple of people that applied for something were booking for that trip or not, so it may be gone. Burke and Wills, which is late August, I think. I haven't got the date on here. It was in July originally, postponed because of not so much the weather, but the flooding that was expected. And unfortunately, some of the people that booked in couldn't make those dates. So the last time I checked, there were spaces in that. And then in September, there's a Canning Stock route and one on the Anbadell Highway, but they're both full, so not going to help us a great deal. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Ian. Okay, is there any general business from the members? Anybody who is wanting to talk tonight? I'm guessing there is not. Normally, if I don't stick around for a bit, I find at the end of the meeting somebody says, I didn't get a chance to talk. So there's not, okay. Any general business from committee? Alan? Mark? Brian? Ian? Robin? No general business from the membership. So, guest speaker time. Matthew. Welcome to the club.
Thanks for having us.
Good to meet you.
Well, thanks. So we have Jules and Stephen
Yes.
to talk as well. Who would you like us to?
Well, is it possible for you to speak from that? Yeah, unless you want to move about. As you may or may not know, this is being put together and we stream it 1 week later. So whilst we've got very few members here, it will reach a much wider audience at that time.
Well, thanks, Bob. Thank you very much. Thank you to Colleen, who set up the invitation. Colin emailed me some time ago and asked if Transport for New South Wales could present to a very large car club. So thank you very much for extending the invitation to us. My name is Matthew Caife. I'm a Partnerships Manager with Transport for New South Wales. I've been with the RTA RMS Transport for 26 years now in all automotive and compliance capacities. And in putting together a group to talk to you tonight, I have asked Jules Rahim. Welcome, Jules. Jules is a mechanical engineer with our technical inquiries section. Very great person to have as a resource for tonight's event, given that many of the calls that you would make to ask about your vehicles and modifications, etc., it's people from Jules's team that will be taking those calls. And we want to talk to you tonight about the various reference documents and reference points. So what we can explain to you to answer your questions is not anyone's opinion or rumours or anything like that. We can tell you where on the internet you can find those reference points, so you know with confidence that the information that you're given is a valid reference point. To put together our third member for tonight, I have asked Acting Sergeant Stephen Richards. Welcome, Stephen, from the New South Wales Police. Stephen is a valued member on several of our committees in Transport for New South Wales, nominated by the Traffic and Policy Unit for our Historic and Classic Working Group. As it was explained to me by Colin, you have a mixture of modern vehicles in your club, and also you have historic registered vehicles in this club. If you can skip to the next slide, please, Brian. That's okay, I can keep going. I would like to do an acknowledgement of country and pay my respects to elders past and present. Pay my respects to any Indigenous people here or viewing tonight, and respect the nations of the Indigenous peoples of this area as well. There we go. So I think we're into safety moment. If you can get that video to go, please, Brian. So, do you want us to keep going, Brian, with something else? That's okay. Maybe while we're looking for that, if Stephen and Jules might want to say a quick word about where you come from, the section you work with, etc.
You go first. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you. My name's Stephen Richards. I'm acting sergeant at the moment. I work at Blue Mountains Police Area Command as a team leader. I've been doing that for coming up to 3 months now. Prior to that, I've been with the Highway Patrol since 2008. And I've worked at Blue Mountains High Patrol, Windsor or Hawkesbury High Patrol, and at the Joint Heavy Vehicle Task Force. So have a background in heavy vehicle compliance and vehicle compliance and high patrol work. I've been part of the Historic and Classic Vehicle Working Group now, and was the representative on the logbook that you would see for historic vehicles compared with the previous one, which is the paper-based document prior, so I was input on that. I've got a panel beating trade prior to joining the police, and am actively involved in historic vehicles, but not in the four-drive world.
Hey everyone, my name's Chulhas. So I'm a part of vehicle standards, and I was a part of technical inquiries within Transport for New South Wales. So my background is as a mechanical engineer, and I've been at Transport for just shy of 2 years, so I'm a bit of a newbie compared to my colleagues here. And as a background, tech inquiries is basically a customer-facing section of Transport for New South Wales which supports the certifiers who certify modifications on vehicles, the examiners who would be looking at a vehicle for a pink slip or a blue slip, and it's a line for the general public to call up when they have any questions regarding anything to do with documents online such as Australian design rules, vehicle standards, information sheets, VSBs, which we'll be looking at a bit later. And it's a very good resource to use in terms of getting a bit of clarification on modifications to your vehicles, which we'll delve into a bit more detail later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Jules. And I think Brian has our safety moment video ready to go.
Been out shooting all night with the boys from work, and I was driving home and I was 30 k's out of town and fell asleep. Kept going straight, and there was a bend in the road, and I kept going and went through the bushes until I found a tree that
We might
stopped
try
me.
and fix that up. We can fix it up
It's pretty
at the end if you want,
terrifying,
Brian.
really.
That's okay. We can skip that and jump to some questions if you like. So my hope was that we would have a bit of a Q&A panel to answer your questions, and if the committee has questions also that have been submitted by the members, we're happy to talk about those as well. So, over to this great club for questions. Yes, sir.
Where would I go to get a list of all the accessories I may choose to fit
That's a good question because, Jules, I would say there is no exact exhaustive list of things you can do, but there's going to be documents with themes of things you can do. So would you like to answer that one, Jules?
So sorry to point you back at the document you didn't want to read, but there is a document called VSI6, which stands for VSI6. It stands for the Light Vehicle Modification List, and basically it's a list of summary points which state a type of modification and an example of when you would and when you wouldn't require certification for that modification. So an example would be fitting of an engine to your vehicle which is larger than 20% in capacity, and it would have an example saying this will need an engineer certificate. It would have an example of something which is lower than 20% capacity increase, saying it doesn't need certification. So it's not an an exhaustive read like some of the other documents. It's actually quite succinct in the way it summarises what can and can't be done. And that would be the starting point before actually contacting one of the licensed certifiers if you had any more specific questions in relation to one particular modification and your specific vehicle. So if you go into Google and you type in VSI6, it's V for Victor, S for Sierra, I for India, and the number 6, the first link that comes up should be a link to the nsw.gov.au website, which hosts that PDF.
So if I don't know VSI6 or whatever, I just want to type in vehicle modifications have to get engineered.
Mm-hmm. So the alternative to this, and it's a good segue into what the technical inquiries team does, is if you have a general question about a specific modification, if it will or won't require engineering, you can contact our technical inquiries team on a phone number or by email. That phone number is 1300 137 302, if I'm not mistaken, and the email address is technical.inquiries@transport.nsw.gov.au. And what you can do is flick them through an email about your vehicle, the type of modification you have in mind, and they can actually send you a reply with a link to the specific information that you may need. And generally, the team is really good in summarising the steps you would go through if it is something that needs to be engineered. So they would link you to the list of engineers, where you can find them on a map, and kind of the process under which you would be getting that modification certified if it does indeed need certification. Thanks.
In VSI6, it does guide the customers through what are owner-certified modifications, and it gives plenty of examples of all the minor things you can do, not an exhaustive list, because having exhaustive lists is quite a trap, because that one thing that you're going to do is probably not going to be on an exhaustive list, because it would be infinite. So the documents give you themes and categories of the changes that you've got to make. So owner-certified modifications are if you've got the base model Land Cruiser with steel rims. Owner-certified modification would be putting the more fancy rims off the Sahara or something like that, off the equivalent year model. That will be described in general terms as an owner-certified modification. Upgrading the stereo system, all those kinds of easy swap-in, swap-out modifications. And then when we start to cross that line into things that require engineering certification, you'll start to see the theme about drilling, cutting, welding, going above and beyond what the manufacturer has said. So I think in answer to that question, there'll never be an exhaustive list. No road authority would ever provide one of that nature, but we give you themes and we describe the line in the sand. Under that line, owner certified. Over that line, require engineering certification to provide the element of road safety sign-off that we require. Stephen?
Any fuel tank change requires a certification. Are you nominated a long-range fuel tank?
That's why I actually asked, because I had my vehicle certified for a GB and a blah, 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 and
Yep.
he went, oh, look, you've got a fuel tank.
Yes.
I'll have to do that as well.
Yes.
And I wouldn't know where to find that information about what needs to be certified and what doesn't need to be certified. I just wouldn't be able to find it. And I actually went and had a look and I still couldn't find it. So, you know, good on the engineer for finding it, but I just found that I couldn't myself find that information of what I had to do and what I didn't have to do.
Yeah, and VSI 6 is taken from the Gazette order. So there's a government order that lists modifications require certification, and VSI 6 is an explanation to make it easier to understand. It doesn't list everything because it doesn't necessarily focus on all areas of compliance, but it's a good starting point. But things like additional fuel tanks and Land Cruisers would be a fairly common one that you would come across, where you would buy a long-range fuel tank and it moves into the area where it requires certification. So another one is a straightforward brake upgrade between a 200 series Land Cruiser, brake upgrade to a 79 series Land Cruiser. That requires certification, even though you're just taking a component off a different Toyota and moving it onto there. So anytime you get involved in changes to things that make your vehicle stop or things that make the vehicle go, you very quickly cross that boundary between owner certified and requiring a compliance certificate.
The supplier of the fuel tank didn't mention it to me, but he would have known.
100% he would have known. Yeah, and if you look at most of the supplied aftermarket fuel tanks, they'll have branding on the fuel tank. So a lot of it's straightforward, because sometimes it's not about the item itself requiring certification, it's about the way that item is fitted. So in our role, so Matt's with Fire and Rescue, he didn't tell you, he does that as retained. Last night, not before.
2 nights ago.
Two nights ago, we happened to come across each other at a motor vehicle collision where a Nissan Patrol had removed his anti-roll bars. He hit a large puddle and rolled his car over. Apart from that, he'd fitted aftermarket Ford Falcon seats to his Nissan Patrol using aftermarket mounting system. The system can be certified, but he hadn't done the bolts in. He'd cross-threaded the bolt and one of the bolt was just in there. So sometimes certification, you've got to understand that it's not necessarily sometimes the component which is the issue, it's the person that was fitting that component to the vehicle, which is where the concern is, and that's what the certifier is checking and certifying.
Probably a really good time while you're there, Stephen, to talk about no matter what is happening in this conversation, it's always the individual behind the wheel of that vehicle that remains responsible and liable for these modifications. So this is a talk we have quite often. Stephen, you want to expand upon that a little bit?
Can I just cut in for one moment?
Of course.
I think Richard's having trouble up there getting your voices to project.
Do you want me to use that one?
Well, you could. Because he's filming this, basically, we need to hear what you say. And for anybody in the
I'll
audience...
just jump in, Bob.
So
I actually had a question.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a question, and I also, if we could try and hand a microphone over to them so they're all talking to
yes, but what I would like to do to anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question, before you start, Recce will come over with a microphone so that you can be speaking into it, so that everybody who watches the stream of this at a later time can hear everything that's said, asked and answered.
Great, that's sounding okay? So just to repeat my question to Stephen, who is the person that has to turn up to car crashes, look at vehicles that have rolled over, etc. He gets to see firsthand the impact of modifications that aren't necessarily safe. I was asking Stephen to expand upon just who is responsible, regardless of who you've got to fit equipment.
Yeah.
And while Stephen's looking that up, we did want tonight to have the computer up here, so as we spoke, we could bring up onto the screen to show you these web links to expand upon what technical inquiries can offer to call up the documents. But that's okay, we can probably send through to Bob or Colin a few of the top 5 links that the members of the club would benefit from. And probably an appropriate time to also mention these issues that we're talking about are the same for fully registered vehicles or vehicles in your club under the historic scheme. So The things we're talking about here, there is no difference. If something needs to be certified by an engineer, there's no leeway exemption if it's in the historic scheme.
Yeah, that's correct. So in regards, just the road transport vehicle registration regulation is the piece of law that dictates a requirement to have a compliance certificate for the vehicle. And what it says is, a person must not use a vehicle on a road or road-related area, and the registered operator or owner of the vehicle must not permit the vehicle to be used in such a way if the vehicle has had a modification to which this division applies. So what the law says is that if you own the car and someone else is driving it and requires a compliance certificate, even if you're at home watching the TV or here tonight and someone's driving the car around and it doesn't have the compliance certificate, you are responsible and can receive a penalty notice for allowing that person to drive the vehicle, as well as the person who is driving the vehicle can receive the penalty notice. It's the same fine, but it is split in law between the person who owns the car and the person who drives the car. So the fine is $899.
Just off the top of your head. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question at the
Yes,
back.
sir.
I'm one of the driver trainers for the Land Cruiser Club, and we often get asked plenty of questions in regards to placement of, we call it jewellery on the vehicles. And one of the questions that comes back time and time again is light bars and light fittings. Mainly a light bar fitted just below the roof rack above the windscreen of the driver. Now, is that allowed or not? And that's the first part of my question. I'll let you answer that.
So, yeah, answer to part one. Stephen and I are both looking around in Jules's direction because this would be a very common call to our technical inquiries people. There are a few guidance documents about fitting lights. There are applicable Australian design rules. So, Jules, over to you for fitting of lights, heights, etc.
It's a shame we can't bring up the documents that we're referencing because there is a vehicle standards information sheet, which is number 64, which I think is titled Aftermarket Forward-Facing Lamps or Lights. And that basically covers things such as spotlights, light bars and whatnot, and where they're fitted to a vehicle when it is facing in the direction of travel. And it has a lot of diagrams to actually show you where you can and can't install a light. I can't quote this off the top of my head, but in the road transport vehicle registration regulation, there is a clause which states a light bar cannot, or driving lights cannot be used in a way which disrupts something along those lines other drivers. So there is a difference between where it can be fitted and how it can be used in terms of the way it's angled and whatnot. But off the top of my head, if you, it's a shame we don't have the VSI, it does show that you can have spotlights on the front of your car as long as, I believe there's a clause saying they don't protrude to cause a dangerous protrusion. And I believe light bars on the top of the windscreen also are okay. Yeah.
I can answer that one specifically. So as Australian Design Rule 1300 relates to light bars, it was around about 3 years ago it changed. So a few years ago the design rule was very clear and it said that additional headlights must be mounted at the front of the vehicle. It was changed and there is a component that talks about if it's not at the front of the vehicle but it doesn't cause a distraction either directly or indirectly to the driver of the vehicle. So the issue with the light bar on the top of the roof relates to the spread of light that would cause a distraction to the vehicle driver, and that would include, say, a polished aluminium bull bar. If the light bar reflected off the bull bar back into the eyes of the driver, that would be the problem there. But yeah, Design Rule 1300.
I think we found that document and we had a look at it just 2 weeks ago, I think, at the training, and it mentioned at the top of that document that these were guidelines. So the question between the driver trainers, Simon and myself, were, if this is a guideline, is it law? Or is it just a guideline that then be interpreted differently by various police officers? And we couldn't find an answer to that.
Okay, so Australian design rules are the rules for how a vehicle must be built. They are in the schedule of the road transport vehicle registration regulation for how a vehicle must be made. So there's a schedule for vehicle standards. That schedule lists the design rules as being rules. So if it's in the design rules and says that it has to be on the vehicle, then it has to be in that way and comply with that one. Depending on the breach of the design rules would depend on the fine and whether it has demerit points. But as a general rule, maximum penalty $2,200.
Great, thanks gents.
Yeah.
Yes sir.
I've been trying to do a brake upgrade on my 79 series. Going with a Bendix kit, so rotors, calipers, lines, everything can be changed out just as replacement parts. But when it comes to the booster, Bendix provide an engineer's letter, if you could call it a certificate, to say that all the testing has been done on it. When I go to local engineers to get the sign-off for the individual vehicle, they're not accepting that certificate. They're saying they have to do their own testing, like on a closed road. Is that correct, or can they accept the Bendix letter?
I think, Jules, what we're getting to there is a type approved, like an ARB style generic approval versus someone wanting above and beyond that for the individual approval. And I'm guessing the engineer probably wants some confidence in the overall upgrade of what you've done, not just the booster. Have you got anything you want to add to that, Jules?
Yeah, so when you head towards modifying a vehicle's braking system, there are significant considerations to how the vehicle would dynamically act, which may differ between different accessories fitted on different vehicles and the weight distribution between two vehicles of the same year, make and model. And that would be, I guess, at the engineer's discretion to sign off on a type approval. And what they kind of test in order to do so is on a checklist basis. So for someone to sign off on a specific code, which will relate to, say, an engine modification, braking system, etc., there is a checklist of tests and procedures and items that they follow and tick off in order to sign off on a vehicle. So that would usually follow the same procedure, whether it's a type approved kit or whether it's individual components, as each code has a set list regardless of if you do something major that falls under that code or minor but still falls under that code.
Do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think equally when we talk about a brake upgrade with engineer, I've seen scenarios where they will use the evidence based from the supplier, so be it Bendix or say it's a superior engineering kit or one of those types of kits where it's a set kit. Sometimes the certifier could do a road testing which would be not necessarily at that greater level if they were relying on the evidence, because the certifier is signing off on the vehicle, they're not necessarily signing off on the componentry. So think about they are accepting responsibility. So when you went to Toyota and you bought your standard Land Cruiser, Toyota bore the responsibility for ensuring compliance with the Australian design rules and the schedule. You've changed the vehicle, so it's changed away from the way that Toyota made it. The certifier is certifying the vehicle as meeting the standards. And so if they want to drive it and test it and do that testing, it's because if something happens with that vehicle, the evidence that they've recorded and kept when they've signed off on your certificate would be called upon to be produced to demonstrate that it still complied with the standards, even though it had differed from the way Toyota made it outside the limitations as set for owner-certified modifications. So a certifier could sign off based on the Bendix evidence, but they would have to still be satisfied that the evidence that Bendix supplied was the same as your vehicle. The other time they could get away with that, change that. The other way they could use non-testing would be if they had testing on a similar vehicle, but as Jules will probably explain, similar vehicle to similar vehicle is a very tight area. So if you've changed other things on your vehicle, the Bendix evidence might not be sufficient because you might have changed other components. So if they did a brake booster upgrade, didn't change calipers, and you've done their brake booster upgrade with different calipers, then their evidence wouldn't be sufficient because it's not an identical system.
Thanks, Stephen. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question. If you happen to have bought a second-hand vehicle which had aftermarket modifications, for example, long-range fuel tank, is there any way of finding out whether that was certified originally? Just asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. So, showing my age, in the, let's just say the late 90s, I worked in technical inquiries, and that was a common question back then. And we were able, in some circumstances, to look up on the drives database with all permissions being met, and we'd look for things like previous records of inspection. That was still a bit loose because it's not providing you with any documentation. Like at best, we could find a record that said something like modified as per report number 1234, and then that still leaves you, the customer, to try and find record 1234, because Stephen and his colleagues are going to stop that vehicle and they're going to be asking for that document. So since that time, Jules, has anything changed in what we can do to help customers with perhaps previously modified vehicles with their paperwork?
Unfortunately, not a whole lot. However, one easy thing that you can do when you are confirming if a compliance certificate has been lodged and recorded against your vehicle's registration is if you look up the vehicle's registration via the Service New South Wales app, it should show modified as per report number with the report number there, and that should also show on the vehicle's certificate of registration. And if you believe a vehicle may or may not have had a previous modification certificate number, or say you've got a modification certificate number but you don't have any further details, the Tech Inquiries team are able to look up any certificates on the current VSCCS scheme, which has been around 2013. And what they're able to do is look up the certificate and share with you the name of the certifier and their contact number so that you can get in touch with the certifier to get a copy of the certificate, as each certificate is signed off by the certifier, so it would have to be a copy that they've printed and signed off on.
Yeah, great answer, and that still leaves us back to one of our themes, which is that it's all up to you, the operator. It's like, an analogy there is it's like buying a house where someone, you know, you see it all the time, where the house is $1 million, but the ad says, you know, extensions are yet to have council approval or something like that. So you have to take that on board and factor that into your purchase price, knowing that worst case scenario, you may be up for recertifying that vehicle, and it may in fact not pass, you know, and that's a risk you're going to have to take as you're inspecting it. You might want to get a pre-purchase inspection, ask the advice of a certified engineer before making that kind of decision. Sure.
Another thing to be wary of is often vehicles are returned to standard before they're sold, as opposed to being the other way around, where you purchase it modified without a certificate. Sometimes you purchase it in the standard format with a certificate that's already lodged against the vehicle. So it's always good to look up the vehicle's details, say on the Service New South Wales app or on the certificate of registration, and keep an eye out for any condition codes that may be applicable to the vehicle, which may reference a modified as per report number comment, because sometimes the vehicle may look completely standard, but it may have had previously certified modifications.
So while you got the mic, Jules, that's important for insurance implications, that if you are buying the ex-ambulance, for example, from Queensland, it's now in New South Wales, really good price, looks good to me, let's buy it. When you ring up GIO, they're going to say things like, are there any modifications on this vehicle? You're going to have to say yes. They're going to want to know what they are. So you're kind of paying a lot of money for no reason in that example Jules has given, when the ambulance people in Queensland have stripped all the good gear out of that vehicle, probably doesn't need certifying anymore, but as far as the world is concerned, on the computer databases, it still is a modified vehicle. So what would you say, Jules? You'd always say to people, buyer beware, get pre-purchase inspections, do your homework, talk to other people. I'm imagining groups like this are a wealth of information in terms of someone has gone before you, perhaps learnt the hard way, so they can now, teach other people about a better process to do things like that. And I think we had now a question. Yes, ma'am. Oh.
I'm going to I'd like you to cover some things on towing,
yes.
tow mass, etc. I've had my vehicle upgraded to 4-tonne tow capacity. I have a van on order which I specified 4-tonne, but they can go to 4.5-tonne ATM. Is it correct that I can only tow, or that the van can only weigh what I can tow at the maximum? Say it's only going to weigh 2.8 tonne, but
yeah,
it'll have 4-tonne capacity. But if that was rated at 4.5 tonne, would that make it illegal?
So let's break it down a little bit. Really interesting question talking about towing. We could probably talk about towing all night, probably into all of next weekend, because there'd be at least 10 things, probably more, that you have to take into account in working out, are you legal to tow what you want to tow? So that is the 3 or 4 specifications of your vehicle, the specifications of your tow bar, the specifications of the thing that you want to tow, special manufacturer's specifications, like I think it's Mitsubishi that goes above and beyond and has a sticker near the tailgate that even adds even more complexity to what you're allowed to tow. So if you want to repeat, thanks for the intro, if you want to repeat the specifics of your scenario again, but we would probably put a big caveat on these answers that we don't know what we don't know. So this being live streamed, please don't quote us on any kind of perfection in this answer, because there's a lot of things. And sorry, sir, before you talk again, we do have a great deal of information from both our Centre for Road Safety, which you can get to on Google by typing in New South Wales Centre for Road Safety or Road Safety New South Wales. There's a dedicated section on towing. There are VSI sheets. If you're ever in a right time and place, keep an eye on our website. Our behavioural teams are funded to deliver towing field days, for want of a better word, where we engage a towing expert company, private people that do it day in, day out, and we invite the public into like a showground environment with New South Wales Police, and they'll roll your whole unit onto scales like this, the pad style scales you see weighing heavy vehicles, and they will go through all of this and give you a sheet and a description. And most people come away quite amazed and then put those answers on Facebook, YouTube, etc. at how overweight they were. They thought they were, decent, honest people trying to do the right thing, but with all the water, case of beer, all the food in the caravan, etc. And despite and also, like we said previously about doing your homework, the salespeople would perhaps sometimes be a bit colourful in trying to sell you a product when what they're telling you is different to what the scales actually say. So, having said all that, we better get to your specific question.
Yeah, okay. So the car has 4-tonne tow capacity.
Mm-hmm.
The van was 3.5, but it was capable of 4.5 due to the axle ratings and
so
things.
it could have a tonne of load.
It's only 2.8 tear.
Right.
So the strength of the axles and suspension is rated at 4.5 tonnes for the safe workload?
Correct, and the chassis.
Yep.
So they said to me I could tow the 4.5 tonne, but it was only 3.5 tonne. The vehicle was only 3.5 tonne. I've upgraded the car to 4 tonne, and I've told them to plate it at 4 tonne for the van as well. So, but if it was plated at 4.5 tonne, can I tow it with a 4 tonne?
No.
No. That's what I thought, which is good. And there's an ongoing thing with that with GCM as well. I'm up to 8 tonne on GCM, but I hear a lot of people say GCM is not.
I'm curious as to how you would increase your GVM. So with what we see your towing capacity. So with current upgrades to GVMs, it's robbing from your GCM. So if you had a 3.5 tonne GVM and you had a 7 tonne total GCM allowed, so you could be 3.5 tonnes towing 3.5 tonnes, and you upgraded your GVM to 4 tonnes, you reduce your towing capacity by 500 kilos because you can't increase your total GCM. So any current new GVM upgrades are robbing from your towing capacity.
It's all plated and registered.
Yeah, that's why I say I'm just curious. It would depend on when it was done, because Jules will probably be able to advise when, but that's been a recent change with GVM upgrades and towing upgrades. It was taking from other places to get it. So, but yours sounds like a specific thing. Probably best to talk at the end specifically rather than.
There was a lot of testing, and I think I went through a set of brake pads getting it done. But
yeah, I'm happy to talk at the end. Probably better than this.
Great.
So Jules, do you want to add anything about towing? Because I would bet it's probably a 1 in 5 question with technical inquiries, and perhaps just touch on all the different elements that the customer has to be aware of, like the rating on the tow bar, the downforce, ball weight, etc.
So I was just going to say real quick on the Matt's point, it's possible to have an unloaded caravan that would put more weight on the tow ball than a caravan that was loaded when you're towing. So if you had water tanks rear of the axle on the trailer and they were empty versus full, it would change the downball weight. So that's something to bear in mind with caravans.
Look, honestly, I think Matt covered the criteria quite well. It does come down to individual cases a lot of the time when you're talking specifically about a modified vehicle. So in circumstances such as yourself, I would advise, if you didn't have the opportunity to speak to Stephen here, it would be to contact the technical inquiries team, and this would be a specific question which you would run by them. And just to add on to technical inquiries, for a situation like this, it would be great to send them an email with as much details as you can, because often a reference document which can be found online is a lot easier for someone to send you back via email or try and process parts of the situation, the question at hand, as opposed to a phone call. But yeah, as Matt was saying, the GVM of a vehicle, the actual vertical load on the tow ball, the tare mass, obviously thinking of how much other payload is going in the vehicle, along with the payload that's going in the caravan itself, it all kind of adds up, and the way that it's loaded up can significantly kind of load or unload areas of the vehicle which you may not expect. And short of really saying kind of be aware of it and take as much precaution as possible to ensure that the vehicle is loaded properly, it is a bit of an individual case-by-case basis. So it's something that you just have to pay, I guess, attention to when you are loading in all your items and before you head off on a trip, to make sure that everything is as you expect and you don't find out halfway down the road.
Yeah, it was more the legal side of things. I'm fully aware of all the loading and all that sort of stuff. You know, where the loads, where it is in the van, how it affects tow ball mass, etc. All that. It's just more the legalities of it, and whether what I've paid for and all the testing I went through was legal.
Yeah,
and it was through
it's a really good question. It's a really interesting topic. You know, in Transport for New South Wales, we are the regulator. New South Wales Police are the enforcement agency. It sounds like you're really good at doing your own homework. You want to get what you pay for, etc. And I'd imagine that's how all the people are in this club. And my best advice is you get as many reference documents in front of you, then make up your own checklist and start going through everything one by one. You know, all the characteristics of the vehicle, all of its specifications, etc. Then do all of that with your caravan. There is heaps of information. You'll have to filter what you think is valuable and not valuable on YouTube, the internet, a lot of great Australian product. I'm sure your driver trainer people look at some of these good sites, and it's those people you can learn from as well. So I think we have ma'am up the front has been waiting quite a long time. Oh, but Jules, let's finish up on towing.
Just one other thing to consider, when you are looking at certifying a vehicle, feel free to contact a number of different certifiers and run them past your scenario to make sure that you're getting consistent answers and that you are getting what you expect again. There is a list titled VSCCS Bulletin 1, which is a list of all the current certifiers under the scheme, all their details, the competency codes for what they do and don't certify. And by all means, do the due diligence in contacting 2-3 different certifiers to make sure that you're getting a consistent answer.
And very quickly and shortly, certifiers are limited in what they can certify. So they're not an open book or an unlimited ability. They're bound by the National Code of Practice, which is document VSB 14. There are other documents as well, the brake assessment manual, the suspension and ride height manual, and certifiers, when they issue a certificate, need to only certify within the bounds of what they can certify. And it could be a situation for people where they've paid money for a certificate which they think is within the realms of what can be certified, only to find out that the certificate was issued outside the limitations of the certifier, and that's where the certificate would be invalid.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I change headlights to LED lights?
Well, there is a document about that. You mentioned that before, Jules, the lighting guidelines. And I'm guessing the answer is going to be yes, but in particular circumstances, given some other factors. So the swapping out from the cheap model to the expensive model that had factory LED lights, that would be an example of an owner certified modification. Then when you move above and beyond that, buying things off eBay, etc., then there's a myriad of checks that have to be done, and they may be checked in the blue slip, pink slip environment as well. So is any more to your story that you can tell us?
But who do I ask? Because this has been a big shock. So all my modifications I should be checking from all the numerous things that I have done to my car. I never thought that, you trust the companies
yes.
that do the work for you
yes.
on the car, so you assume they know what needs to be certified and not.
Well, you would to a certain extent, but I think a take-home that we'd really like to give the members of the club tonight is that you're the person that's going to be getting any infringement that may be incurred. So it's for you to do your homework. I'd be starting with, you see the product that you want, then you can Google that product and start seeing, is someone saying in trustworthy places that it's meeting Australian design rules? Has someone from the club done it before and got any information about it? Do our friends at Technical Inquiries have information about that? So, Jules, what kind of questions are you getting at the moment from people when they ring up about, I'm imagining they're talking about a couple of things. Swapping out their normal low beam, high beam set for something aftermarket, and then also you see a lot now of the auxiliary lighting that has an LED ring in the middle and things like that. And then we've also got what's relatively new to the market in the daytime running light environment. So sorry to load you up, but that's about 3 things there in lighting that's going to go some way to answering your question.
Yeah, so there is an Australian design rule which is ADR 13, and ADR 13 references lighting devices on, it mentions vehicles other than L group being motorcycles. And that ADR summarises the individual component ADRs that a headlight would have to meet, that a tail light would have to meet, that an indicator would have to meet. And when it comes to modifying lighting devices, if there is a concern that the vehicle may not adhere to the ADR, the onus is on the owner to show compliance. So if we don't know if the modifications ensure that the vehicle continues to comply, we would require evidence to show that it continues to comply. And in that instance, you would be looking at contacting a licensed certifier, say in an instance where we're talking about a factory sealed beam headlight which has a replacement bulb, and the bulb has gone from an incandescent bulb to something that's LED. You'd be contacting the certifier to let them know that, hey, look, this is what I plan to do to my vehicle. Could this compromise the compliance of this vehicle? And if so, what do I have to do to have this modification certified? There are units that can be purchased, or as Matt mentioned, OEM components of upper model trim vehicles. And at that point, we kind of assess the component as a whole, whereas if you're looking at a replacement bulb in a factory headlight, there's a bit of mix and match going on, so it is a bit of a grey area. When you're looking at OEM offered components of an upper trim, as long as all the supplementary components that go along with that are added to the vehicle, generally we count that as an owner certified modification. So there could be things such as headlight washers that come up for an HID conversion, level sensors, and any other accompanying equipment.
So did we go some way to answering your question, the lighting question? So why don't you give us an example of just one of the things that's been done to your vehicle, and we can perhaps steer you in the right direction of getting it checked to give you some peace of mind.
Tonight, I think there's a big list, but for example, we have the steps. Well, you know, the first time you go off four-wheel driving, the step comes off because you've mangled that up. So then you put a rock slider on.
Yes.
Who decides what's the right rock slider? So you go to a store, you purchase it, someone installs it, you assume it's right. But am I meant to assume that, or am I meant to now check, is that rock slider compliant?
Yeah, so we move away from lighting into now bolt-on side steps.
I mean, I'm sure we've all done this. Running boards is another word for them, and rock sliders. I'll start the conversation by saying the bolt-on rock slider, running board, side step, the primary worry there is just going to be the affecting the width of the vehicle. You know, yeah, sharp objects, etc. So I don't think I wouldn't really think rock sliders, running boards are going to be worth the investment if you have to then go and spend $2,000 on an engineering certification, you know. So when you get this question at Tech Inquiries, Jules, you don't want to push someone to an engineer to just spend a lot of money when they don't need it. A few simple checks like, is it nicely rounded, professionally made, no jagged edges, and is it affecting the overall width of the vehicle? You know, you're going a long way to getting satisfaction there with a tape measure and no money. Do you gentlemen want to add to that one?
Yep, other things such as blocking indicators, and if it's incorporated into the front bull bar, there is a bull bar technical specification document which has a few guidelines to check, such as is the bull bar made for the vehicle, and there are a few examples, illustrations of what is and isn't accepted within that document as well. That doesn't necessarily address sliders and steps directly, but it kind of, well, a lot of the time that blends into the question about bull bars as well, so it's just some more additional information. Yeah, by all means. I can share the contact information with the club and they can pass that on. And I think, as Matt mentioned earlier, it would be good to maybe submit some of our more frequently referenced documents for everyone to have a look at. It's a shame we couldn't have them up there because some of them are quite easy to look at once you've got kind of an idea of where to look.
One last quick question. It's a yes or no answer. This certificate that I've got from engineering, do I have to carry it with me, or is the fact that it's on the database sufficient?
Stephen's already said yes.
You must carry it with you. Think of that document as...
Do I have to carry the original or a copy?
Yeah,
or a certified copy?
You just have a copy. As long as the certificate is the explanation of the vehicle asset in condition.
So the certificate's available on your console in your police vehicle?
No, it's not.
So you don't have the registration details of my vehicle?
Don't have your certificate.
Okay, so I have to carry the certificate with me. Okay, all right.
If you don't have the certificate, you'll receive a defect notice, and depending on the condition of the vehicle, it would limit you to a very short time to drive the vehicle, if at all. So we don't have access to the certificate.
And clearly there's an engineering certificate attached to my registration, but the police officer would say, no, I'm going to ignore that because he hasn't got a piece of paper with him. So this is the digital world, but I have to carry a piece of paper with me.
You have to have a copy of the certificate so that we can look at the certificate and compare the certificate to the vehicle.
So I have to carry a piece of paper.
You asked for a one-word answer, and the answer was yes. Think about it from the police point of view and the public's point of view. You're the one that knows what's happened to your vehicle. No one else does. The 10,000 odd police in New South Wales, 18, wow. They have a mobile data terminal. It is linked to our drives database, the transport database. That database is, so I've been here for 26 years, it's about 30 years old, that database. It is great in the fact that it's never been hacked. It's bulletproof in terms of protecting your data, where you live, all your vehicles, etc. But in terms of the modern utopia world that you are, quite rightly alluding to, that is some time away, where the police can scan a number plate, it will bring up a certificate, it will explain everything. That is a future point that Transport and the police would hope to be at one day. But until then, all Stephen and his colleagues are seeing is Regio ABC 123, modified as report number, da-da-da-da, and then you present that report and they reconcile that with the vehicle and go from there.
Yeah, in relation to compliance certificate with the vehicle, if you put the registration of your vehicle into the Service New South Wales app, that's all we see in relation to the modification certificate. We just see modified as per report number, and we then need to marry up the report with the condition of the vehicle. So it's extremely common to see vehicles that have been modified after the issue of a certificate. It's very common to stop a vehicle where they don't produce a certificate, and we look at the vehicle and we can identify that the modifications are outside the limitations of the code of practice. So a simple one would be tyre size, where you are limited in your tyre size increase when combined with a suspension height increase. We stop a vehicle, it has 37-inch tyres on it and a compliance certificate and a lift kit. They don't produce a compliance certificate. It would be a guarantee the certificate doesn't include the large tyres, and if the certificate did include the large tyres, then it would be a fraudulent certificate issued outside the code of practice. So you need to carry the certificate so that we can be satisfied that what we're looking at on the piece of paper and what we're looking at on the side of the road marry up with the limitations of what the certifier can issue the certificate for.
Thanks, Stephen. I can't believe that people would do that. So I hope that went some way to answering your question, but if we bring it back to one of our themes tonight, the onus is on the operator. Even if we had the future utopia, the police would still be wanting to reconcile, right, I've got a document here on my screen or on a piece of paper, it says there's a huge engine fitted to that vehicle, but it doesn't say, all these other things that have been done to it have been accounted for by an expert.
A question about the historic cars. So the club's got about probably 30, 35 historic vehicles registered, and it's a growing band because the newer cars are getting older. If that makes sense. So we get, we started off with the 40s, then we had a few 55s and 60s, now we're into early 80s because they're 92. The question for historic vehicles is often that they are supposed to be in original condition, and then what's the interpretation around period modifications? Given that if you go and look at a brand new Land Cruiser in the car park, the first thing that happens when it leaves the showroom is they put a 2-inch lift, they pull a bull bar on it, and a set of driving lights, and that hasn't changed in 60 years. So it's the interpretation around period modifications that causes consternation.
It's an excellent question that, once again, like towing, we could talk for a long time. So I'll kick this answer off, and then I'll jump to Stephen. He's on our committee also for historic and classic registration, and then we can finish off this question with Jules to hear what are people ringing up and asking about, and what answers and documents is technical inquiries able to give them. Also interesting to note now, I find it quite interesting that you can buy a brand new Land Cruiser 79, I think, which is almost the same as the one, and probably cheaper than paying for a 1980, museum piece Toyota. And they still ride the same. But you get one cup holder, I think, and an airbag. So to the question, the whole philosophy around period options and accessories primarily can be a club managed philosophy, and that is if you want to have a purists club, and there might be the absolutely pure Jaguar Club of New South Wales, and they want you to have original Duco, original rims, no CD player, no aftermarket aircon, etc. It's okay for them to have those kind of club rules, and to a person that brings a Jaguar that still only has owner-certified modifications, it is okay for them to recommend another more generalist club for that kind of person. Happy so far? Yes. So the cut-off line that Transport for New South Wales and New South Wales Police are interested in is where there are major modifications, significant modifications that require engineering certification, that would then, no questions asked, nothing, above and beyond club philosophy, you're now in the realm of what is classic registration, where, and that would be the 427 Chev in the Jaguar environment, Momo, more modern wheels, etc., where it still has to be in a club, but it requires certification if appropriate, and it's in our classic registration scheme with a different number plate to identify that to the police primarily, that it is above and beyond minor certification, and it's out of that pure category. Did you want to add to that, Stephen?
Yeah, I think when you look at the eligibility for historic vehicles, it talks about the vehicle being not being modified. There's a list of approved accessories on the website, which is draft and under review. And in the world of four drives, the issue you may come across with police on the side of the road is that an accessory or is that a modification? That might be where it's at. Is this club affiliated? So do you do classic rego or just historic rego? Yeah, I do historic rego. Yeah, okay. So then you're just going to fall into that. It's a difficult area, to be honest. I think Matt and I are on the committee, and we would agree it's a hard point. It's not super clear cut because there's confusion with interpretation of accessories versus modifications. But the spirit of the historic registration is original vehicles. I think would probably be the easiest way to look at it.
So you could probably expand, Stephen, or I'm happy to. The bull bar scenario is about, you've got your 1978 Land Cruiser, it's got a bull bar. It would not be unreasonable for that person to be able to demonstrate, yep, but that was a period option bull bar of the 70s. Now, all other things being equal, no major engineering dramas with that example, that's fine to be in historic registration. Historic.
Yeah. If you could look at the car and it's not modified and it's like it could look driving down the road in 1984, then that would be fine to see in that if it's got a bull bar on it. If you look at it and it's got one of the more modern bull bars and you look at it and go, in 1984 it wouldn't have driven down the road with that bull bar and that LED light bar on the roof and LED tail lights, then it's a problem. Equally, you couldn't have a 1930 Model A Ford with accessories that were available in 1980. So the accessories and what's fitted to the vehicle needs to be within the time that the vehicle left. Yeah, so get away from the word modifications to accessories and then look at it and go, where does that fall in? So the list of approved accessories and options would be something you could be guided by, but I would be cautious about using that for any decision. Yeah, so if you were to look at that in that example, yes, on the options list, it talks about lowering it by an inch. So if you could put that in reverse, but if you could put that in reverse, it would not be unreasonable to think that you could go up a small amount, but it would be difficult. The problem you're going to find with old vehicles is that data on the vehicle is limited. So with any late model Land Cruiser on the side of the road, I get the approval number off the compliance plate, I get the build plate that Toyota puts on the vehicle, I go to the police car and I get the vehicle descriptor sheet from the transport website, which is the data that Toyota provided to the government about the vehicle, and I use that data to determine whether or not the modifications of the vehicle are within or outside the owner certified. So Toyota will produce the trim height, which is the distance between the centre of the axle and the wheel arch. I'll measure that on the vehicle, I'll access a descriptor, and if you're within the tolerances, it's okay. If you're outside the tolerances, it's a problem. The same with lowering. They produce they have the height at standard. They have the minimum height it can be. They have the unacceptable height. So we look at those. So for a lowered car, I'd look at, firstly, is it lowered within the tolerance down without going beyond the minimum the manufacturer sets. So in certain circumstances, you can only lower a car by about 20 millimetres because that's all the manufacturer will allow. So even though there's other documents that say you can lower a vehicle up to 1 inch, you might not necessarily be allowed to because the manufacturer might say, no, you can't lower it very much. So an example is like HSV Commodores or HSV Holdens. They don't allow for very much lowering because they've already taken that tolerance out of the original Commodore. So when you look at it in that respect, it would be difficult working out your height to lift it with a historic vehicle.
Thanks, Stephen. So, to expand upon that issue a little bit more, I don't think you need to be worried, and your members don't need to be worried about things that are more on the accessory side as opposed to the modification side. What was the name of your driver trainer fellow on the Richard. So Richard has had an involvement with driver training, and in my career with transport, I've done a lot in that space as well. And I used to say when I was training people, the clear, obvious error will land on your lap. And Richard would know that when he's sitting with someone and they're about to, do a stall recovery on a hill. He will know after doing 100 of them that the person doesn't really have a grasp of what they're doing, and the step that's going to happen next is a real scary one, and that's going to land in his lap, and he's going to take some action, like screaming out, pulling on the handbrake, trying to jump, whatever. And it's the same with this topic. The vehicle's going to come to you as a committee registrar or something like that, and the Sunraysia wheels, the bull bar, all of those things were probably in the Overlander magazine of 1984, you know, with the SAS steering wheel ad and the Clarion stereo and all that kind of stuff. Could be reconciled somehow by the committee and the member if they wanted to. But the suspension modification, the significant raising, the massive engine, all those things are going to jump out as a very clear, obvious example of we're now in the realm of modification that probably needs certification, and that will more than likely mean they are ineligible for the historic scheme.
Who has the liability? The club who certified it or the driver?
So, someone in this room already can probably put their hand up and answer that question. Who has the liability for the car that has been incorrectly modified or not in the scheme? Yeah, so
if I understand your question correctly, you're saying if, as police, we stop a vehicle on historic rego that's outside the limitations of the scheme, does the club have any responsibilities?
Yes, because we signed the certificate.
Correct. The person who puts pen to paper on that form has an obligation, and there is an offence under the Crimes Act for a vehicle that is on historic or classic registration that shouldn't be for the person that put pen to paper, because it's a declaration to the government that the vehicle complies, and it doesn't. So who signs forms? You? Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Oh, I'll be. Yeah.
We don't want to. You let one car through, and then 40 other people pay the price if the club can't do historic records continually.
Yeah. Correct. Correct. As a general rule, my observations of historic vehicles that I see. So I see what I stop. I see what gets stopped across the state in my role, and general compliance from either single make or single type clubs is far higher than general clubs. So if this was, being the Toyota Land Cruiser Club, my thoughts would be that compliance would be better versus if this was the Chilora Car Club, where you're open to all makes and models versus a narrow field of vehicles. So generally, when the age of the vehicle goes up, the age of the owner goes up, or the value of the vehicle goes up, when any of those three components increase, general compliance is better.
And Jules, what kind of questions do you get about historic and the period options? Have you got anything you want to add to that topic?
Look, I think Stephen covered it pretty well. It is a grey area, so when it comes time to answering those type of questions, we at tech inquiries they would usually try and reference some sort of a document, but given the grey area and the lack of a clear-cut line, generally we do reference back to the club. So it would be best to speak with the club if you're concerned about a specific modification or accessory.
And just one thing on that, we see more non-compliance in relation to completing logbook entries rather than people driving around with the wrong type of driving lights or that sort. Yeah, they do. Yeah, in simple terms, yes. Yeah, so prior to driving the vehicle on the day, a entry is made. The entry needs to follow that date, full name, signature. It's only the three things. Once the entry is made for the day, the vehicle can be driven from 1 minute after midnight to 11:59 p.m. It can be driven for that entire time, or it can be driven for one journey. One entry for the day allows as many or as little trips in that day, and you don't have to be a member of a club to drive the car. So if you're the member of the Toyota Land Cruiser Club, you have a historically registered vehicle, you've completed the logbook entry, I have a driver's licence that permits me to drive your car, but I'm not a member of the club, I can drive it. You don't have to be a member of the club to drive it. There just has to be an entry in the logbook, and the entry in the logbook is, in essence, part of the insurance. So that allows that use.
There's 60 days private use.
Yep.
What about club use?
So,
in addition to or included, the logbook itself tends to indicate that. I'm not sure that it's live. Sorry. So the logbook system allows you 60 days of private use.
Yes.
And then do you get club use on top of that?
Yes.
And is there any limit to the club use? So, for instance, because we're a four-wheel drive touring club, the question's been raised, can I take my historic vehicle on a 3-month trip around Australia? Which is excessive, but that's an example of a question, which is in excess of 60 days, but if it's on a registered club trip, am I allowed to use it? Can I take it to Cape York on my historic plates? I don't know the answer.
I'll go out on a limb and answer that question.
It's not common.
I don't think that is the spirit of the scheme. I think the scheme is to preserve historic vehicles and to allow the owners of those vehicles to have an element of enjoyment and freedom with those vehicles, and that was expanded with the introduction of the 60-day logbook, which most clubs took up, to give you 60 days above and beyond the mechanical check, club run rules of days gone by. The scenario that you described is something that many camper van, motorhome, kind of non-historic interested people are trying to push. And my thoughts on that are that jeopardises the scheme. That if there was a crash on that type of trip and the insurance company that underwrites that got involved, they would be questioning the regulator as to why are they allowing that to happen. So I probably can't give you a document that says that is acceptable or unacceptable, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Certainly within our club, we would restrict it to weekend trips or trips to and from the club property.
And that is, I mean, if people wanted to push the point, that 3-month trip would be an extremely long club diary entry. It would probably take up the whole diary.
You would want to see
all the details of the trip.
You can't just as a member go on a trip. You have to have a trip registered with the club.
Yep.
So it's got to be a registered trip for it to become part of a club activity.
Yeah.
So we're reasonably strict on that.
It's a club event, not a club trip. So if one person in the club wants to go to Lithgow and they have a historically registered vehicle...
That's private.
That's exactly right.
But if they're travelling to the club property to do a working bee or something, that's probably a club event because they're attending a nominated event for the club or participating in a club activity.
So they still need to fill out a run sheet, and it needs to go in the diary, and all the records need to be retained by the club. So you bear onus for recording all the journey details and answering the risk if they have a crash and the insurance company goes to it. So you can't have a blanket, we meet at the men's shed or we meet at the RSL club and you can go to the RSL club every day because that's our meeting point. That's private use.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an event that the club attends and it's in the book and you fill out the form and the form goes away and it's recorded by the person, then that's okay. But yeah, 3 months is probably too much. I used my historic car 5 times last year, so looking at that...
You did well to get out.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, that we get asked examples like this all the time, but then most club people tell us, just like Stephen said, they struggle to use the 60 days. So it's kind of a moot point, argument, discussion. I've got a fully registered old car, you know, and I don't use it. I'd be lucky to use that 10 times a year. So the theme for that is, again, I think the clear, obvious error is going to land in your lap. That would come across to fair and average person test as not the intent of the scheme. And sticking with that test, back to our modification accessory question. When the police go out to a place like Newnes State Forest, you would be having that clear, obvious error land in your lap philosophy as well. That it's not looking at a beautiful old Land Cruiser with, was that accessory around in 83 or 84? I don't know. It'd be more that's a significantly raised Nissan Patrol blowing clouds of black smoke on historic rego. You know, the person has probably got no interest in preserving that bit of history at all. They are just wanting the kind of cheap registration, putting the scheme in jeopardy issue. They're the people that are going to get pulled over and get the magnifying glass. So, Bob, I'm not sure how long we're meant to be going till, but I'm happy to be guided by you.
Yeah, well, look, I think we might try and draw it to a close. I don't want to just say let's stop,
That's
but
fine.
if we can sort of be planning.
Yeah.
If we said number, if we could.
Are we? So we're finishing up. I think we've still got a few more questions. This is just. I'm hoping to close with this as a safety moment.
Okay.
But I'm not saying that we're finishing up.
Could we also then just summarise at the end? If you guys could say to me some places where our members here, I can give the information to them, that they can either send an email to you or telephone numbers to talk to people about.
So I'm happy to wrap
issues.
up on that point, and then I'll let. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the historic things are something that Mark could talk with you guys about.
I'd encourage everyone, from what you've heard tonight, before you call tech inquiries, sit at home. You're watching TV anyway, so start Googling some things, see what you find. You're going to like some of it, you're going to think a lot of it is rubbish. Have a look on YouTube for these topics as well, and then start honing into the actual source of truth, which we've mentioned. So Google Transport for New South Wales, Google legislation, ask your fellow club members what they've found, and you're probably going to find the answer before you actually have to ring up Jules or send an email. Having said that, you're certainly welcome to, and we'll provide Colin and Bob those details. We'll have a chat outside afterwards, and I'll scatter my card around with an email address, and I can field questions around that you might want to shoot through, send through. You may also want to talk to your club registrars. So is that what you call them in your club for historic? So Mark, so have a cup of coffee with Mark and talk about your historic vehicle and what you plan on doing it, where you want to go with it, etc. And then I'm sure you have a club constitution, club rules, etc. And that's going to guide you as well. One thing I probably haven't touched on that the other gents, I'm sure they want me to mention, is when we talk about responsibility, Stephen mentioned the club signing off on the eligibility form, but it's you that have to be worried as the operator, as you put in an insurance claim, the white Camry that's hiding down the end of the street now, from insurance company, they watch how many times, this historic vehicle is at Emu Plains railway station every single day because someone's dobbed it in. So you, the operator, are responsible for those things, because if you hit a telegraph pole in that car, you put the claim in, they're going to be asking questions, and the payout there is in jeopardy. Even worse if you hit a Lexus or injure a person, because then it's going to go up into the millions. No, that's why I had a reference there with Lexus. I didn't know.
Probably a good point to point to that historic and classic registration is still a form of registration. So if there's a fine that can be issued to a fully registered vehicle for bald tyres, not having a compliance certificate, all those fines then fall back to the historically registered vehicle as well.
Okay, could I just, we have, after we finished here, we have a raffle, so by 10 o'clock at the latest, I would suggest we have a supper out the back there. If you guys
definitely.
would love to
And
come out to that, and you can leave a bit of information, or maybe if anybody has a simple question they can talk to you about.
Fine. And add to your raffle, Bob, we have some transport drink bottles. I think I've got some pens. The definitely not a period accessory for your older cruisers, the cigarette lighter USB things. I don't think USBs were invented.
No, I think they weren't.
back then, but yeah, we're certainly welcome to, and we'll give to the committee some of that gear to give away as you see fit to the people that are watching the live stream.
Look, that's fantastic.
Stuff like that.
And Matthew, Stephen and Jules, I think you've been more than generous with your time, and it's been of great interest to most people, so,
so
wonderful. But we better have a look at this you've got up here first.
So yeah, we'll have our safety moment, then we'll probably do a wrap-up, and we'll do our thank yous. So this is Joseph from Yeovil, this video.
Been out shooting all night with the boys from work, and I was driving home and I was 30 k's out of town and fell asleep. Kept going straight and there was a bend in the road, and I kept going and went through the bushes until I found a tree that stopped me there. It's pretty terrifying really, like you're driving along and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're banging through the bushes. I knew I was tired, but I thought I'll be right, I'll be able to make it home. But it just, when it happens, you're not aware of it, I guess, and yeah, you wake up and you never know what situation you could be in. If you're tired, just pull up. Like, this was 2 o'clock in the morning, so find somewhere to stay in town. Just keep off the road because it is a real danger.
With that video, it wasn't, I didn't even put it a Toyota in the video on purpose, but Joseph is not an actor. One of our behavioural team was delivering to a TAFE, where we deliver road safety presentations to TAFE students, because it's quite a high risk category. They're young male, they're overrepresented in fatal and serious injuries crashes, and Joseph started to tell his story. So they filmed it on an iPhone and created that video. So if you want to share stories like that with your families, children, grandchildren, etc., because it's up to all of us to take part in the road safety plan to try and reduce fatal and serious injury crashes. And talking about safer vehicles, which we were tonight, is a big step towards that. So I'd really like to thank the committee for inviting us. Colin reached out to me. Haven't got to meet Colin yet, but really great chatting with him and planning with him. Unfortunately, he's trapped out at North Richmond with bridges underwater. I thought it interesting that he works for Careflight, that he couldn't get picked up by one of the crew. And I'd really like to thank Stephen and Jules. Their knowledge is second to none. Your level of experience and the way you can impart that in a friendly manner, can't thank you enough for coming along. And finally, I'd like to thank the members for giving up your time to come along. Been great to meet you. Hope to see you again. And the tech crew, thank you very much. So thank you so much.
Well, again, thank you, gentlemen, Matthew, Stephen and Jules. I think you've presented brilliantly. Your answers were clear and concise, and once we got the microphone being passed around, and this will go out to many of our other members. I sort of apologise for the very small crowd here tonight, but the weather, we had more apologies of people that couldn't come than there are here, as it turns out. So it was just unfortunate, but quite a few of the members will see this on the stream. So yeah, we'd love that. That would be wonderful. Where is Sally?
Well, that was fantastic. We're so grateful for our three presenters, as Bob, the President, said. As we all know, Noel and I manned the desk, and members have said we've come specifically to hear this fantastic talk. So thank you, and thank you for the raffle prizes. It was very, very nice of you. I just want to mention a remark that was made just before the meeting started, and a member said, oh, you know, there's so few people here, we shouldn't really have these raffle prizes because it's a fundraiser. Well, I just want to tell you, well over 20 years ago, the club was short of funds. And so the Sergeant of Arms stood up and said, made funny finds like, Colleen, she's not wearing her name badge. And then we had members carrying a bucket around, and other members were putting coins into that bucket. But times have changed, members and guests. We are now quite substantially funded, as you know, from the Treasurer. So these raffle prizes are coordinated by Noel and I to have fun in the club, because we want to give back to you, because you are the strength of the club. So that's what I want to let you know. Also, Katie, who's a legend in the club, she does the suppers. She was actually distressed not to come today. She actually made homemade egg sandwiches. She lives in Rossmore, near Camden, so we do understand why she's in here. So I rang Bob up and said, look, hey, Bob, I can go to Coles and get the supper. We just live around the corner from Coles, so there we go. So we have a great crowd. Masterclass it was today with guest presenters, and we all have an opportunity to win a $25 gift card. And that's another thing. You cannot buy 6 gift cards at a time. Why? Because there was scam. So I was questioned, why was I buying $25 gift cards, what I was going to do with it. So if I wanted 6 gift cards, I had to go another time to get 1 gift card, which I wasn't going to do because I've got a lovely KitchenAid utensil for the 6th prize. Now I'm going to invite Colleen Franks to come up here, please, because she's added a bit of sparkle with the gift cards. Now, Colleen, can you explain this sparkle with the containers?
I work in a pathology lab, and we transport specimens, in particular interstate and overseas. And we transport them in these airtight, watertight containers that apparently you can drive a car over and they don't break. Now, these are not used, but we use the boxes and we throw the containers out. And sometimes we need larger ones, so the smaller ones get thrown out. So over the years, we've been throwing out these containers, and I always think it's a terrible waste. So I took some home, put some rice in, put breadcrumbs in, so my pantry filled up all of a sudden. So then we're caravanning. So caravanning, oh yeah, they stack neatly, squarely. So then family members. So over the years, everyone's got them. So I bring a bag home the other day and the family go, we are sick of these bloody containers. Get rid of them. And then I went, you know what, why don't I share out these containers? So starting today, this is my collection, and I hope whoever wins and likes them, I'll just keep bringing them along. But they're very good, they're very useful, they're very clean, unused, but use them with good health.
Let's give her a clap. Good on you, Colleen. Thanks for the thought, and Colleen's going to write down the names of the raffle winners, and I'm going to ask Brenton, our new member, to come up to draw the raffle tickets. Let's give him a clap. A new member. He came to the last meeting. He was so impressed he came to this meeting. Now, Brenton, before you do that, tell us why you joined the club.
Right, thanks, Sal. My name's Brenton Booth. I came along last month and met a lot of wonderful people. It was interesting when I came along, I noticed everybody seemed to be roughly the same age as me. which was a little concerning. I thought, well, you know, I've got grandkids and kids of my own, but then I got to hear that you had quite three distinct groups of people. You had the young singles, you had the family people in between, and it was elderly people like us that came on the Tuesday nights because we've got nothing else to do rather than sit home and watch television. I've been a keen four-wheel driver probably most of my life. Not so much, I've done quite a bit of outback stuff, but most of my four-wheel driving has been to get me to the ocean, which has been my passion. I'm facing retirement, and I say facing it in a nice way because it's a damn big decision after working all of your life to decide when you're going to give up work. And as much as I love my wife, I don't know whether I can spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with her just yet. So I'm looking for another alternative. And the club appealed to me, great bunch of people, so here I am. So looking forward to meeting you over the coming months and years, hopefully.
I hope so too, Brendan. We celebrate the big O birthdays, but we celebrate everybody's birthdays. So we're going to celebrate in July, even though they're not here. They are here in spirit. Carla Riviere, Peter Murphy, Jenny Morby, Bob Anderson, John Kenny, Ian Moggs is here. You're under 80, aren't you, Ian? You look under 80. Andrew Boyd, Ricky. There you go, yes, you're definitely 21. And Steve Curtis. Now, can we have your raffle tickets, members and guests? And I'm sure you'll agree, if you win twice, we'll just redraw it. So we hope everyone gets a prize. So the first raffle ticket, Brenton. Is Orange Star F22. Orange Star F22. Oh, good. Good on you, Sue. Okay. So next one, please, Brenton. Orange Star F44. You have to pick the next one. Pleasure. Good on you, Jed. Orange again, 39F. 39F. Missed by one. Last call, Orange Star 39F. We'll do a redraw. Oh, yes. There's little sweets in those containers, by the way. 48F, Orange Star. 48F. What? No, I've got them here, no. Oh, it's Chris Chapman. Okay. Next one is black, E94. Hooray, that's good. Well done. So either that one or that one, yes? Thank you. Lucky last. Oh, two more, right. Orange Star F55. Oh, that's fantastic. Good on you. So one more now. Orange Star F17. Oh, there's another one. Oh, you got yours, okay. Ricky, you got the little KitchenAid. Well, that is it. And I'll hand back to Bob.
Thank you very much, Sally. And without any further ado, I will declare the meeting closed, and the next meeting will be on the 1st of August at this same venue. Thank you very much.